Being the last day of the lectureship, we're probably feeling a bit tired. We're probably feeling a bit, we're feeling uplifted. We're feeling encouraged, but it's always quite exhausting, isn't it? Having a lectureship, filling all this stuff into this one weekend, and all these lessons and all these heavy topics. So this morning we're going to be dealing with something nice and light, something nice and easy, nothing too heavy. We're going to be talking about the meaning of life, nothing that's going to cause us to think too much, I think. One of the things I love about the lectureship, one of the things I love about any lectureship really, is it is a break from the routine, a break from the mundane. It's very easy in our lives to get caught up in the same thing day in, day out, the same routine. We wake up at the same time, we do the same things, we eat the same meals for breakfast, we have we go through our daily routine, and it's just the same thing every day. And sometimes we have a lectureship and it's a break from that. It's a break from the routine. As we talk about the meaning of life, it is very easy to look at our lives, look at our routine, look at the mundanity of it all, and look at the same thing over our lives. And it's very easy to get a little pensive about that. A little, thinking about, the purpose of life, thinking about meaning. As I look at the things I do with my life, as I look at my early years, my developing years were spent in a classroom. My developing years were spent, learning and spending time in a classroom. As soon as I'm out of school, I spent time in the workforce, clocking in, clocking out, getting into a routine. I spent years doing various different jobs, different careers and things like that, and I'd jump from one job to the next, to the next, to the next, and things like this as I'd go through. Eventually, as you go through your life, you've worked. Eventually you get to retire, but by that time you might be too old to start thinking about exploring questions like the meaning of life. And then you're too tired to really maybe pursue the things you want to do. Maybe you spend a bit of time through life doing your hobbies and enjoying some things, spending some time on pleasure and enjoyment. But eventually we all die, and we look back on our life and think, what was it all about? What was it all for? Did I accomplish anything? Would the world have been any different if I wasn't in it? We're dealing with something light today, right? My point in that is not to depress you, but to make us think about the things of we want to matter in life, right? We want to matter. We want to make a difference in this world. We want our life to mean something. We don't want our life to be this mundane routine all throughout our lives, and then eventually we just die in obsolescence and it doesn't matter. There is nothing different that happened in our lives. We want to matter. We want meaning in life. This world wants meaning. The world needs meaning because we're striving for that. We're striving towards meaning in our lives. This morning we're going to be spending most of our time in the book of Ecclesiastes because this book really echoes that cry. It echoes that ache that people have for meaning in their lives. People today, they want meaning, they're searching for meaning, but as they go through their lives and they look at the mundane and the routine and they look at their lives, particularly as they draw to the end of their life, and they go, what was it all for? What was the meaning? The book of Ecclesiastes is written by King Solomon, likely later in his life, as he's looking back at all the things he did in his life, and he's looking back at all the things he was engaged in, look at all the things he was involved in. And he says at the very beginning, the same cry that I think many people are feeling today in Ecclesiastes chapter 1 and verse 2. Vanity of vanities, says the preacher, vanity of vanities, all is vanity. That's, I think, what many people are feeling today. There's emptiness in the world. There's lack of meaning, meaninglessness, purposelessness, vanity. When we think of the character of Solomon, we think about his life and the way he and his who he was as a person, his character, we need to understand that he was a person who he had it all, right? He had it all going on. If we look at the book of 1 Kings in chapter 3, we read a few traits of Solomon there. 1 Kings chapter 3 and verse 12, it says, "Behold, I have done according to your words. Behold, I have given you a wise and discerning heart, so that there has been no one like you before you, nor shall one like you arise after you. I have also given you what you have not asked, both riches and honor, so that there will not be any among the kings like you all your days." Excuse me. So Solomon he's known for his wisdom. He's known for his wealth. He was a very, very wealthy and honorable man. He had, in his day, he was the wealthiest person. He had riches beyond comprehension in his day. If we look at chapter 4 and verse 21, it says, "Now Solomon ruled over all the kingdoms, from the river to the land of the Philistines, and to the border of Egypt. They brought tribute and served Solomon all the days of his life." So he was a wise king, he was a wealthy king, and he also had quite a lot of political influence. He had a lot of control over the lands that he was given. He had a lot of influence in surrounding nations. If we look at chapter 11 and verse 3, 1 Kings chapter 11 and verse 3 talks about Solomon's wives here. 1 Kings chapter 11 and verse 3 says, "He had 700 wives, princesses, and 300 concubines, and his wives turned his heart away." So he had wisdom, he had wealth, he had influence, he had power, and he had all the women he could have wanted. He had 700 wives and 300 concubines. He was a man who had it all. He was a man who had everything. And as he gets to the later parts of his life and he looks back at all the ways he lived and all the things he enjoyed, all the things he accomplished, you know what he said? "Vanity of vanities, all is vanity." Emptiness, purposelessness. That word vanity there, it really comes from a Hebrew word that means smoke. What he's talking about is it's something that's fleeting. It's something that's there for a moment, but it just disappears as quickly as it came. It's not something you can grab or hold on to. It's fleeting, it's temporary, and it's not something that's permanent. So as he looks at his life, he sees vapor, he sees fleeting, he sees smoke, he sees vanity. That's what the world is feeling today. That's the way the world is looking at life and saying it is vanity of vanity, all is vanity. If we go back to the book of Ecclesiastes, what we're going to do is we're going to look at some of the ways that what Solomon does in the book of Ecclesiastes. Really what Ecclesiastes is Solomon looking back on his life and looking at all the different ways that he tried to find meaning in life. All the different things that he pursued to try and find meaning. And he kind of gives like a bit of a review to each. He gives some pros and cons. He gives like his own thoughts on the matter. He gives like a few things on it. But ultimately he concludes that everything is vanity. And this is the world we live in today. We live in a world where people feel that there is no meaning, that there is vanity, that there is purposelessness in their life. We pursue different things, like we pursue meaning in our careers, we pursue meaning in our families, we pursue meanings in our relationships. But ultimately we conclude the same thing. At the end of it we say, what is it all for? It was all vanity. Let's look at a few of the things that Solomon explores in the book of Ecclesiastes. Firstly, in verse 3, there's another repeated phrase. So the term vanity is repeated a lot throughout the book of Ecclesiastes. But there's another phrase that's used a lot, and that is in verse 3. What advantage does man have in all his work which he does under the sun? That phrase, under the sun, repeats over and over and over again. And really what he's talking about when he says under the sun, he's just talking about this life. He's talking about this world and this God's creation. All the things that we do in this world, all the things we do in this life, it's all under the sun. So he's using this phrase, under the sun, as this very broad statement, this very broad kind of anything in this world, anything in this creation, it is all futility, it's all meaningless. Excuse me. We've looked at a few of the attributes of Solomon, but I think if we did like a word association of the character of Solomon, probably the number one answer that people would give when they think of, I'll put it out to you, it's a Bible class so I can do this. If we did a word association of Solomon, what's the number one word that comes to mind, the number one characteristic that comes to mind with the character of Solomon? Wisdom. Yeah, wisdom, right? That's what we know the character of Solomon for. That's who he is. He's a wise man. He's the wise King Solomon. But notice how he describes wisdom. When he decided, I'm going to pursue wisdom in this life, and that's where I'm going to find meaning. He gives his review of that in verse 16 and verse 18 of Ecclesiastes chapter 1. It says that, I said to myself, behold, I have magnified and increased in wisdom, more than all who were over Jerusalem before me. And my mind has observed a wealth of wisdom and knowledge. And I set my mind to know wisdom and to know madness and folly. And I realized that this also is striving after wind. Because in much wisdom there is much grief, and increasing knowledge results in increasing pain. That's not a stellar review of wisdom, is it? Of all the things, when we think of Solomon and we talk about his wisdom and we extol this virtue in our sermons and we preach about this and look at the wisdom of Solomon, isn't it wonderful? That's what we ought to be like. We ought to be wise like Solomon was. Pursue wisdom. That's right, we should. But notice how Solomon himself spoke about his wisdom. There's grief in wisdom. There's pain in wisdom. It's striving after wind. It's vanity, just like all these other things. He says, if we continue in chapter 2, chapter 2, verse 12 to verse 16, he says, so I turned to consider wisdom, madness and folly, and what will the man do who will come after the king except what has already been done? And I saw that wisdom excels folly as light excels darkness. So he's got something nice to say about wisdom. It's better than being a fool, right? It's better than folly. The wise man's eyes are in his head, but the fool walks in darkness. And yet I know that one's fate befalls them both. Then I said to myself, as the fate of the fool, it will also befall me. Why then have I been extremely wise? So I said to myself, this too is vanity. The idea is, while there are benefits to wisdom, while being wise is better than being a fool, what's going to happen to the wise man? He's going to die. He's going to die, just like the fool is. We're all going to die, and his wisdom isn't going to protect him. What good is all that wisdom, all that accumulated knowledge? What good is that going to do you in the grave? It's vanity. It's emptiness. So instead of wisdom, he goes on to say, I'm going to pursue pleasure. I'm going to pursue pleasure instead. This is a popular philosophy today, a popular pursuit in today, where we basically say, well, life has no meaning. There's nothing that I need to look forward to. There's no purpose in life. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to pursue pleasure. I'm going to pursue the things that I want to do. I'm going to pursue my own highest good, because that is the only good there is in this world. Just pursuing pleasure. Solomon didn't think very highly of this philosophy. In Ecclesiastes chapter 2, verse 1 to 3, it says, I said to myself, come now, I will test you with pleasure. So enjoy yourself, and behold, it too was futility. I said of laughter, it is madness, and of pleasure, what does it accomplish? I explored with my mind how to stimulate my body with wine while my mind was guiding me wisely, and how to take hold of folly, until I could see what good there is for the sons of men to do under heaven the few years of their lives. Excuse me. Solomon did not think highly of the pursuit of pleasure. It was vanity. It was emptiness. It was folly. Because pleasure, just like wisdom, it's momentary. So wisdom Sure, it lasts through your life. You can have it throughout your whole life, but then you pass away and that wisdom is gone. Pleasure, that's even more futile. It's even more vain because it lasts for just a moment. It's enjoyable in the moment, but then it's gone. Then you go off and do something else. Pleasure is momentary. It's gone instantly. It's shorter even than wisdom. So what about something that lasts? What about something more, something that continues? Things like a legacy, building a legacy for yourself. You know, here we are 3,000 years after the death of Solomon, and we're still talking about him, right? Solomon's legacy has certainly lasted. We still talk about Solomon today. We talk about his wisdom and his virtues. But Solomon says this too is vanity. Ecclesiastes chapter 2, beginning in verse 4 says, I enlarged my works, I built houses for myself, I planted vineyards for myself. I made gardens and parks, I planted them all kinds of fruit trees. I made ponds of water from which to irrigate a forest of growing trees. I also possessed flocks and herds larger than all who preceded me in Jerusalem. Also I collected for myself silver and gold and the treasure of kings and provinces I provided for myself, male and female singers, and the pleasure of men, many concubines. Then I became great and increased more than all who preceded me in Jerusalem. My wisdom also stood by me. All that my eyes desired, I did not refuse them. I did not withhold my heart from any pleasure, for my heart was pleased because of all my labor. And this was my reward for all my labor. He was a man with a legacy. Right? He was a man who had a legacy. He built and he constructed and he made things that were going to last. Verse 11, thus I considered all my activities which my hands had done and the labor which I had exerted, and behold, all was vanity and striving after wind, and there was no profit under the sun. Even though legacy lasts, what good is the fact that we're talking about Solomon if he's not here to hear it, right? Again, it's the same as wisdom. It'll last through your life. You enjoy it through your life. It's better than being a fool. But then you're gonna die. And that's it. No more legacy. It doesn't matter. You don't get to enjoy your legacy when you're dead. While there is good in activity, there is good things in being active and working and laboring, it is not the same as purpose. In Ecclesiastes 5, we see Solomon pursuing riches. Again, this is another popular pursuit today. Finding meaning in wealth, pursuing riches, pursuing goods and physical things. In Ecclesiastes chapter 5 and verse 10, Solomon says, he who loves money will not be satisfied with money, nor he who loves abundance with its income. This too is vanity. Again, Solomon was the wealthiest man of his day. It was an illustration that was given recently at an illustration given recently about John D. Rockefeller. He was the wealthiest man of his day, right? He was the wealthiest man in America. And when a reporter once came to him and asked, "How much money is enough? How much money until you're satisfied?" John D. Rockefeller responded, "Just a little bit more. Just a little bit more." That's the thing with money, right? That's the thing with wealth. You're never satisfied with wealth. That's what Solomon says here in Ecclesiastes 5:10. If you love money, you're not going to be satisfied with money. You're always going to want more money. There's never enough. You never get to the point where this is it. I've gotten the money that I've achieved. You always want more. You always want to grow that wealth. So Solomon looked at all these things. He looked at wisdom, he looked at pleasure, he looked at legacy and achievement, he looked at wealth. And you know what he concluded? Vanity. All is vanity. It's emptiness. It's meaningless. Again, this is not to say that these things are bad. It's not to say don't pursue wisdom because it's vanity. Think of that illustration of the smoke, right? That's what this means. It's that it's fleeting, it's temporary. You can have it all you want, but you're not going to be able to hold on to it and keep it. You try and grab smoke and it just vanishes away. That's what Solomon is saying about these things. It's temporary, it's fleeting. There's no purpose in these. They're not inherently bad, but they're not the purpose of man. You're not going to find meaning in these things. So where do we find meaning? Where are we going to find meaning? If Solomon looks at all the things he does, he looks back at his life, wonders what he's done with it, and he says it's all vanity. There are a few points in Ecclesiastes where Solomon does give a few hints at meaning in life. In chapter 2, verse 24 to 26, he says, "There is nothing better for a man than to eat and drink and tell himself that his labour is good. This also I have seen, that it is from the hand of God. For who can eat and who can have enjoyment without him? For to a person who is good in his sight, he is given wisdom and knowledge and joy, while to the sinner he is given the task of gathering and collecting, so that he might give to one who is good in God's sight. This too is vanity and striving after wind." We look at chapter 3, verse 12 and 13. "I know that there is nothing better for them than to rejoice and to do good in one's lifetime. Moreover, that every man who eats and drinks sees good in all his labour. It is the gift of God." Chapter 5, verse 18 to 20. "Here is what I have seen, to be good and fitting, to eat, to drink, and enjoy oneself in all one's labour, in which he toils under the sun, during the few years of his life which God has given him. For this is his reward." We'll continue on to chapter 8 and verse 15. Ecclesiastes 8 verse 15 says, "So I commended pleasure, for there is nothing good for a man under the sun except to eat and to drink and to be merry. And this will stand by him in his toils throughout the days of his life, which God has given him under the sun." These are the clues that Solomon gives during his review of his whole life. He says, you know what is good? The one thing I found that is good, there is nothing better for man to do: eat, drink, and be merry. And we think, hang on, didn't you just say in chapter 2, verse 1 to 3, that the pursuit of pleasure is vanity? Didn't you just say that this is not enough, that this is folly? Notice the difference in each of those passages. There's a key phrase that changes the perspective here. What Solomon is saying is not just, well, there's no meaning, so just pursue your own pleasure. That's not what Solomon is saying in this passage. He's saying in each of those passages, this is the gift of God. That's what he says in chapter 3, verse 13. "Moreover, that every man who eats and drinks and sees the good in all his labour, it is the gift of God." It's recognizing God's gifts in your life. What Solomon is saying is not give up on meaning and pursue pleasure. He's saying, stop trying to manufacture pleasure. Stop trying to manufacture purpose in your life. Stop trying to manufacture meaning through things like wisdom and wealth and pleasure or whatever it is. Stop trying to create your own meaning in life and just recognize that God is in control of it. God has control of purpose. God has control of meaning. And you can't decide what it is. So enjoy what it is that God has given you. Enjoy the life that God has given you. Receive his gift. You know, we love to be in control, right? We love to be in control of our own lives. We like to make decisions and make plans for our lives. I'm going to live in this town. I'm going to work this job. I'm going to do these things. I'm going to marry this person. These are my plans for my life. How often does that actually work out, right? Things don't always work out the way we plan because we're not in control. God is in control. God has determined the meaning of life. God has determined the purpose of life, and it is not up to us to decide. You see, that's what happened in the Garden of Eden. In Genesis chapter 3, when Adam and Eve sinned against God and they took the fruit, they were saying, I know what God has told me. I know what God has told me my life is about, but I'm going to choose something different. I'm going to pursue my own path. I'm going to pursue my own meaning rather than listening to what it is that God gave as meaning. Because when we get to the end of the book, if we look at Ecclesiastes chapter 12, this is when Solomon gives his conclusion. There is a meaning. There is meaning to life. He gives it in Ecclesiastes chapter 12 and verse 13. He says, the conclusion, when all has been heard, is fear God and keep his commandments, because this applies to every person. That's the conclusion. That's the meaning of life. That's your purpose. Fear God and keep his commandments. What Solomon is saying here is stop pursuing meaning under the sun. That's what he did throughout the book of Ecclesiastes. He said, look under the sun. Look at this under the sun, it's vanity. Look at this under the sun, it's vanity. Look at this world, this creation, this worldly, fleshly realm. I look at it all and I see there is no meaning. And then Solomon concludes, meaning is not found under the sun. Meaning is found above the sun. It's found in God himself, in his relationship with him. What we were created for, the purpose that we have, is given there in verse 13. Fear God and keep his commandments. That's what we were created to do. Adam and Eve were created and placed in the garden to enjoy God forever. They were placed in the garden to be the people that God has relationship with. We spoke about this yesterday, the idea of having love, this relationship with God, this perfect, unhindered love that man has for God and God has for man. That's our purpose, to have relationship with God and to keep his commandments. But what we did is we didn't keep his commandments. Adam and Eve ate the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil that they were commanded not to eat from. They didn't keep the commandments. They didn't obey him. They didn't fulfill their purpose. They decided to find purpose on their own terms. They decided to decide it for themselves, like we often do. In the next verse there in Ecclesiastes chapter 12, verse 14, it says, "For God will bring every act to judgment, everything which is hidden, whether it is good or evil." So our purpose is to keep the commands of God, fear God and keep his commandments, because God is going to judge every act, whether good or evil. If you've done the right thing, if you have fulfilled your purpose, feared God and kept his commandments, you've done what's right, then you'll be judged righteously. You'll be judged righteous and you'll enter into the reward of the Father. You will have that relationship with God. You will have that renewed relationship. But if we've done evil, if we haven't fulfilled our purpose, if we haven't feared God and kept his commandments, then we go to punishment. Where do you fit on that scale of judgment? Did you fulfill your purpose? Have you feared God and kept his commandments? Have you done everything that God commanded you to do and not pursued your own purpose, not pursued meaning according to your own design and your own control? Or are you like the rest of us? Have you fallen short of God's glory? Romans chapter 3 verse 23 says, "All have sinned and fall short of the glory of God." Romans 6:23 tells us that the wages of sin is death. And here in Ecclesiastes 12 verse 14, it says, God will bring every act to judgment, which is hidden, whether it is good or evil. So what's different? What's different between what happened in Ecclesiastes? What's different between Solomon writing Ecclesiastes and us sitting here today? Why do we sit here with a hope that we can... again, that red flag went up. So Sam's talking about hope in a moment. But why do we live with a hope that we will go to spend eternity with God? Why do we live with a hope that we can have that renewed relationship when we know we've fallen short of God's glory? When we know we fall short in this judgment that's described here in Ecclesiastes chapter 12, verse 14. The difference is, of course, Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ, who did fulfill his purpose, who did keep Ecclesiastes 12 verse 13 and feared God and kept his commandments. He's the one who did what was right. He was the one who did the purpose of mankind. He did what Adam and Eve didn't do. He lived the perfect life, free from sin. He feared God. He kept His commandments. He fulfilled His purpose. And because of that, He deserved eternal glory. He deserved the reward, the renewed relationship with God. He deserved all that. He had earned that for Himself. But instead of taking it for Himself, He took on Himself the punishment that we deserved, that we can take the reward that He earned. That's the difference. He took our punishment and He gives us His righteousness. He took on our wickedness so that we can take on His goodness. So it is through Him and through the life, death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ that we can fulfill our purpose. We can fulfill our purpose and enjoy God forever and live with Him forever and keep His commandments and fear God and keep His commandments. We can do that because of Jesus Christ, because He fulfilled that purpose for us. So the conclusion of the matter then, we need to stop searching for meaning under the sun. We need to stop searching for purpose under the sun and looking at this world and looking at this life and the fleshly pursuits. Because all we're doing is looking at vanity. We're looking at emptiness and meaninglessness. Because if you pursue any one of those things, whether it be wisdom, wealth, pleasure, whatever it is, legacy, you're going to look back at your life and say it was vanity. It was meaningless. It was empty. Careers, passions, plans, even families, they're all vapor. They're all smoke. They don't last. We need Jesus. Jesus is something beyond this realm. Jesus is something beyond what it is to be under the sun. Without Jesus, this world has no meaning. It has no purpose. And it's like, sure, pursue pleasure. Sure, pursue these other things. It's going to be meaningless anyway. But if you have Jesus, you know that there is more to this life than this life. You know that there is more to life than what we're doing here. There's more to life than the things we do. There's more to life than just living. Don't look back at your life and wonder what it was all for. Instead, look back at your life and know that this was the beginning. This was the beginning of you fulfilling your purpose to enjoy God forever and have that renewed relationship with Him. Stop worrying. Stop trying to manufacture meaning. Stop trying to manufacture purpose. Instead, enjoy God's gifts. Enjoy this lot in life that He's given to you. Enjoy what He's given to you in this life and rest in Christ. Stop looking under the sun because your purpose is found above it. Let's sing the final song.